Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, it's time for some emulation update news. That is because Super ZSNES just recently updated yesterday to version 0.3 from version 0.23, bringing in a ton of new features, some new enhancement chip emulation, some new enhancements to games that you're seeing right now, and just a bunch of other features around the edges. And even though Super Nintendo emulation has been buttoned up for years now, Super ZSNES is reinventing the wheel, and some of the new wheel is definitely intriguing. And honestly, I always say in these videos, the more options the better. Video game emulation is video game preservation, and one more emulator for Super Nintendo definitely wouldn't hurt anybody. So we're going to go through all of the updates in the most recent version of Super ZSNES, talk about what's happening in the future, what's working and what isn't. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And if you're wondering why I'm starting the video with Super Mario RPG footage, that is because it uses the SA1 enhancement chip, and that is now incorporated into Super ZSNES. So basically any chip that is going to use that is going to be working in this build. Let's move over to The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, because that's one game that got enhancements on this recent version of Super ZSNES. And I totally get the enhancement engine is either love it or hate it as far as what it's doing to games. And I'm never quite sure how I feel about it either, but it is something the Super ZSNES team is focusing on. You'll see here in A Link to the Past, you can do widescreen, you can do enhanced textures, and basically make the game look more like a pro Super Nintendo release than actually anything that was on a 16-bit console. And I would say widescreen is definitely a vibe here, and I do like different widescreen versions of A Link to the Past, but for me personally, maybe the texture work here, and maybe the enhancements to the overall resolution not working for every single thing. Yes, the pathway there looks great, all of the actual environments look really nice in this, but there's just something about the character sprites that look a little bit uncanny valley, almost like they're watercolor filtered. And again, this is just something that is in development. It is subject to change to get different improvements, and in the end there's going to be an engine involved, so you can enhance basically any game you want by hand. So even if you don't love this, you might love it on a different game. But as far as the new recent version of Super ZSNES is concerned, Link to the Past gets all these different enhancements, and it might be something that you really do enjoy. But the nice thing is none of these things are required by default. Yes, they will be on, but if you go ahead and hit the escape key, which you'll see in just a moment, we're going to be able to basically turn all of that off. And sometimes you do get that kind of filter on the 4:3 aspect ratio, but we'll turn texture enhancements off, and then you're going to see things change ever so slightly. But if we turn high res off, now we have widescreen support, but Link and everything else has its original pixelated sprite, which I feel like is, at least in my opinion, the best way to play this game. And that really is the fun part about emulation. There's options for everyone, and you get to decide how you kind of want to articulate the experience you want. If you like the new textures and high-res packs, you can totally use them. If all you want is widescreen, you don't have to use it whatsoever. If you just want a 4:3 original experience, well sure, we've been able to do that in emulation for decades now, but having one more way to do it definitely isn't going to be a bad thing. And really, it's kind of fun to see what the Super ZSNES team is up to, just because they made ZSNES back in the day, and now they have a brand new idea on how to basically do it all over again. And that really is going to benefit everyone, because you know full well when you give modders control of how games actually present themselves, and they're probably going to go absolutely wild with this stuff, because it isn't just an emulator, it is an engine running in Unity that you're going to be able to kind of play around with. And I feel like maybe in a year or so you're going to end up with VR experiences and all sorts of other crazy stuff. But you tell me, if you could kind of snap your fingers and make one feature come to something like Super Nintendo emulation, what would that be? Because I really would be curious. And you'll see here there is a new option. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be doing. I think it is just kind of placeholder and let people play around with it some more. If you go into graphics effects mode here, you will see that you can have rumble on games that support it. That is a nice feature, but now it has a pseudo 3D mode where you can actually separate out layers, so you can see kind of a 3D look. Not as impressive in something like A Link to the Past, but I'll show it to you in Super Mario World. You'll understand better. But we're going to do a soundtrack sample while you watch the 3D in Super Mario World. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, but come back. I'll show you more new features and a lot of things that are coming in the future. So honestly, the 3D layer thing, I could see a future for if you kind of had sort of like a Super Mario 3 vibe going on where you had a stage and some of the 3D background layers in the background behind curtains or something like that. But if we go through the patch notes here, you're going to see Link to the Past obviously got enhanced, so we talked about that. And there's also audio enhancements on Chrono Trigger as well. And that was one of the first games we actually saw get any sort of enhancements on Super ZSNES. And if for some strange reason you've never played Chrono Trigger before, I can't stress to you enough, whether it's Super ZSNES or anywhere else, you have to play this game. It is one of the best video games ever made, not just RPGs, but best video games in my opinion. And if we go through the rest of the enhancements here, you're going to see that there's a mirrored mode for widescreen on Mega Man X, as well as new shadow and highlights on different games and normal maps. But honestly, the big thing is we have super effects fixes, some timing updates as well, and on the new chip emulation front, you have SA1 emulation CX4, as well as the Super FX3, which is something that Randy Linden and Limited Run Games added to the re-release of Doom. And I reviewed that on the channel. I played it, and it's going to work here in Super ZSNES. And we have other games that are going to use that chip as well. And I'm sure in the future, the next year or two, you're going to see a bunch of games not only get made for the Super FX3 chip, but also updated to support it, because something like the Doom remake here, that was basically done from the ground up with the existing code to get the Super FX3 implementation in there and give us the best possible version of Doom that you could ever play on a 16-bit console in my opinion. But it isn't just these legacy games that are going to be getting Super FX code. We also have stuff like Star Fox 2, which never actually came out, that has been updated to use the Super FX3 chip, and again, I'm sure other stuff in the Star Fox kind of ROM hacking community, new games that are in the works, are going to utilize it as well. And because it also has the Rumble code in there, also from Limited Run Games and Randy Linden, you're going to be getting experiences on Super Nintendo that would have been impossible on the console back in the day, and that really is fun. It's kind of like an imaginary enhancement chip that actually has real code, and it definitely improves games around the edges, and that's always something good, especially for the 3D stuff. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you play the Super FX3 version of Doom? Have you tried the Super FX3 version of Star Fox or Star Fox 2? I would be curious, because for me, I think Star Fox 2 is probably the most enhanced by actually utilizing this new chip. Sure, it still has a frame cap to 20 frames per second, but it's going to get much closer to that frame cap every single time you play it. And now if you want to play that, you have Super ZSNES as well. And I know a lot of people have been enjoying the emulator because it has a really nice front end where you can manage your games, curate your collection, and basically have the best of both worlds, Super Nintendo emulation as well as a really nice front end. But like I said, SA1 enhancement chips are also working here, and that's what Super Mario RPG used. But don't forget, there's a metric crap ton of SA1 ROM hacks out there that'll speed up games that never had the chip in the first place and run in some instances like slideshows on Super Nintendo. Contra has an SA1 ROM hack, and it basically makes the game run near to full speed the entirety of your playthrough, which is absolutely a vibe. And soon I'll have a video on my favorite SA1 ROM hacks, because it really is a big thing. Let's do one more soundtrack sample with Mega Man X using the SA1 ROM hack, and I'll be right back to tell you a little bit more about the emulator. So you can totally tell in this most recent version of Super ZSNES where the developers are kind of trying to go with this thing. I feel like, again, in a year or so, you're going to really see all of these different disparate ideas come together into something that's going to feel more like a 32-bit Super Nintendo versus something like a 16-bit Super Nintendo. And that 3D layer concept really does have a lot of promise, I think, because I could just see a world in which the background layer recedes in widescreen, so you basically have ultra parallax scrolling, and you can basically kind of just move the camera left and right to get a pseudo 3D effect. It's not going to be for everyone, but I can totally kind of visualize it in my own head, and it really is an exciting time. But in the meantime, if you haven't updated recently, if you haven't tried Super ZSNES yet, the link to the website is in the description below. You can go ahead and play around with it. It might not be perfect, it might still be in active development. Some of the features and enhancements are clearly just kind of not placeholder, but future looking, but it's always awesome to get a new emulator out there because options are always good. And I definitely recommend you check this one out. And if you have been playing it, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.